All right, I guess we could get started. I know everyone's very busy. So first I'll introduce myself. My name is Robert Baker. I go by Robbie, and I'm going to be giving a webinar today called How to Start a Mean and Lean Law Firm. Before diving in, I just want to first say to all of you who are attending, congratulations, because you've taken the first step toward independence and being your own boss. And there is no substitute for that. As far as me and my background, as you could see on the PowerPoint, I've been practicing for 30 years. I'm a board certified civil trial lawyer in the state of Florida. I was the founding partner of the law firm Baker and Zimmerman. I have sold my shares and I'm now working on some other projects. The first thing you need to know in terms of trying to open your own firm or contemplating your own firm is that technology is the great equalizer. 10 years ago, a lot of things that are possible now would not have been possible to do even 5 years ago. Technology levels the playing field and it makes somebody small appear large and act large. I'm going to walk you through some of the steps today regarding what you'd need to do in terms of trying to structure and get organized to open your own law firm. Understand that this is really just scratching the surface, and in the brief amount of time we have, I obviously can't go into any great detail about any of the individual topics, but this will be a good reference guide for you, and anyone who wants a copy of the outline will make that available to you at info@lawyersofdistinction.com. So, without any further ado, what steps do you need to take? First step is, of course, you need a business plan. Can't do any business, law or otherwise, without one. You're going to have to go through several drafts till you figure out what it is you really want to do. You're going to need to have a budget, and you're going to need to consult with an accountant to make sure that your projections are reasonable. A business plan is also going to be very important if you ever need a line of credit with a bank, which is later on in the outline. One of the next steps you'll need to take will be incorporating. And of course, you'll have options of subchapter S, which is a PA or an LLC. Again, something you should consult a tax advisor. And it's something you could either do yourself, or LegalZoom is a very good resource at a reasonable price. I've used them to start several corporations in the past. The entity setup, we've touched upon that. An employer ID. You can't do anything without a tax ID. The government does not know you exist. So IRS.gov is the resource for a tax ID number. The next thing is you're going to have to determine, are you opening your practice on your own? Are you going to open a practice with one or more partners? If there's going to be partners, you're going to need a shareholder agreement. You're going to need bylaws. And maybe most importantly, you're going to need a buy-sell agreement, because you want to take care of those details in good times, not bad. Next item, doing business as. Well, you could, the corporate name that you seek from your Secretary of State, whatever state you may be in, may not be available. For instance, Baker Law may not be available, that corporate name. So maybe I would have to take a name of Baker Legal Group PA, but then I could get a fictitious name filing with the state of Florida, otherwise doing business as, and call myself Baker Law. The next thing you're going to need to do is deal with state licensing bureaus and the state bar. So in Florida, the Florida Department of Revenue, and you'd have to deal with the county municipal occupational licenses. Next item, really important, one of the first decisions and most important decisions you'll need to make is the location of your office. Many people these days work virtually, more and more millennials, and there's many advantages to that. First of all, you have scheduling flexibility, time to be with your family, time to schedule vacations, and work basically on your own time. There's less overhead associated with it. You are more productive without commuting time. And some clients these days actually do prefer that sort of setup, as they're becoming more and more accustomed to working remotely themselves. Some of the options, if you don't want to work strictly remotely, are coffee shops, shared workspace like WeWork, which is in most cities these days, executive suites like Regus, which is everywhere. And another really good option is to sublease space in someone else's existing law office. Some of the advantages there is you will have all of the office equipment in place. There may be a receptionist. Hopefully there'll be a photocopier, ways to scan documents, and you'll have the advantage of camaraderie and potentially even the co-counsel or referral of cases back and forth. The next thing you need to determine is billing software. What are you going to need? Well, a lot of that depends upon the type of practice you have. Is it a contingency fee practice? Is it a hourly based practice? A couple of good resources to look into for that are financial management for the non-financial professional, as well as results-oriented financial management, both available on the ABA website. All of the resources I point to during the course of this webinar will all be listed at the end, and again, will be made available to anyone who wants it at info@lawyersofdistinction.com. We discussed the line of credit. Next is technology. Computers, software, printers, internet service provider, a backup data plan. These days, most people do not have their own servers, and it's all done through the cloud. Again, a great savings of money. What kind of phone system are you going to need? Can you work on a mobile phone only? Those are all decisions you need to make. As far as practice management software, we've discussed a little bit about accounting needs. There are a lot of really great all-in-one practice management software programs that will handle calendaring, conflict management, time, billing, etc. Rocket Matter is a good one to look at for that, one I've seen and I'm familiar with. The next issue is going to be insurance, and you're going to need two types: professional liability, also called malpractice, as well as general liability. I was asked the question prior to the start of today's webinar by someone actually about malpractice insurance. So I inquired in my state through a company called Florida Lawyers Mutual. And depending upon your years of practice, you could get a policy with a premium under $10,000 a year with a $300,000 liability limit and a $10,000 deductible. So the deductible is pretty high, but it's pretty cost effective. Remember that we live in a very litigious world, so you're going to need liability coverage for things as simple as a trip and fall or a ceiling tile hitting someone in the head. Basically, you think of it, it could happen. Also, cyber liability insurance is a growing area. Next item, and I apologize if this is a little bit dry. As I told you at the beginning, it's sort of a checklist. But the next thing you're going to have to concern yourself with is bank accounts. You're going to need two of them. You're going to need an operating account for all of your day-to-day expenses, which you're going to also want to track very closely and make sure that any business-related expenses are in fact handled through that operating account, which will make your taxes much simpler at the end of the year, as well as your IOTA, or otherwise known as trust account. Now, it's super important to know your individual state laws as it relates to IOTA accounts, because it is a potential minefield. The Florida Bar Foundation has an IOTA program. What I would recommend is that you have a bookkeeper come in monthly to reconcile your IOTA account, make sure that there never is an error, and if there is an error, it's corrected immediately. And then you should also do periodic audits, which the Florida Bar requires. The next thing, client forms. Sounds pretty straightforward, but you really have to have it. You have to have sample client forms, fee agreements, letters of representation, all of the intake type forms you're going to need for your area of practice. Then you'll need specific ones for your practice, such as document assembly software. In personal injury, you do demand letters all the time, and you certainly don't want to reinvent the wheel every time you do one. The next thing, the next item is e-filing resources for Florida lawyers. So in Florida, everything now is e-filing, and I imagine it's that way throughout the country. No longer do you need to walk to the clerk's office at the courthouse and physically hand the document and get a stamp on it. One of the next things you'll need to consider is going to be legal research. Determine if you're going to need some sort of online subscription to Lexis or Westlaw. I don't have to do very much legal research, and therefore I utilize Google Scholar, which is an excellent resource. If you have either a case name or a case citation, it's a great starting point. There's also scholarly articles and law review articles available if you just type in the subject matter of what you're looking for. Next item, payment processing. LawPay and LexCharge are two I've heard of. I've never dealt with that personally, so I can't really tell you too much more about that. The next items I believe are really, really important: vanity groups, community involvement, and image building. And let me tell you what I mean by that. Firstly, there's many legal recognition groups out there, and I'm sure you're all members of some of them. You have Super Lawyers, which is very, very well known and requires nomination through your peers. You have Avvo, which has become sort of the go-to ranking service for lawyers. And more and more consumers are looking at that. And then, of course, Lawyers of Distinction, which will give you the most exposure and the most economical, also with an amazing directory. And because you could self-nominate, there's no red tape involved, and it's really quite a simple process. Community involvement. You need to establish a reputation as being a good person in the community. So you could do things like sponsoring kids' youth athletic teams. You could volunteer at a walkathon. You could volunteer at school. You could do pro bono work, or you could get involved with your local bar association. All of these things that are branding and image making are much more important than advertising, which will come much later, but something that you really initially, unless you're have a very large budget, it's probably going to be cost prohibitive anyway. Moving forward, we've covered some of these topics, so I'll jump forward. Video conferencing. Zoom is an amazing resource, as you all know, and something we're utilizing for this actual video conference. Inter-office instant messaging, Slack, is what we've been using at Lawyers of Distinction. It's a tremendous tool, because what it does is it allows individuals within an organization to have instant messaging back and forth, where everyone involved in that particular project is involved, but yet the entire company is not involved. So you could limit it to as few people as you want, or make it company-wide. It's a great tool. Everyone is either paperless or wants to be paperless these days. And the most cost-effective and really simple to use is Dropbox, dropbox.com. If you do corporate work or real estate work or even personal injury, you're going to need documents signed. And again, many people do this remotely too, and DocuSign is probably the leading company for that. Next is phone number, which is not even on the outline. But you're going to have to decide if a local number is going to be adequate for your practice, or if you're going to need some sort of vanity number if you plan on ultimately advertising, or if you have a national practice. So the factors that will determine that are going to be your areas of practice and the clientele that you're seeking. A couple of good resources to obtain good phone numbers are Freedom Voice and 800numbersforlawyers.com. Signage. If you're going to have a brick and mortar office, you're going to need to consider interior and exterior signage. Website design. It's really critical how the world sees you, and they see you only through your website. So similar to the phone number, you're going to have to make some decisions early on. Do you want a general website, or do you want a practice area specific website? How do you want people to find you? How do you want to be optimized? You're going to need very good quality photos. You're going to need reviews incorporated, again, from Google and Avvo. If you have case results to talk about in the past, obviously you want to put your best foot forward. And one of the items I hear repeatedly that helps with search engine optimization is if you have a newsletter or blog. And a couple of website design companies that I have been referred to are Wix and Squarespace. Headshots. You're going to need it for the state bar. You're going to need it for directories. You're going to need it for website. You're going to need it for all promotional materials, professional announcements, on and on and on. Very important you don't chintz with the headshot and that you go to a professional, because you'll probably be using the same ones for 5 or 10 years. Staffing. Well, you could work with a virtual receptionist. You could go on to Indeed.com, which is a great resource for paralegals. Upwork.com I've used for freelance paralegals, been tremendous. Excuse me. And lawjobs.com is tremendous for finding lawyers and seeing advertisements for job placements. So once you've made decisions regarding what type of personnel you're going to need and how you're going to staff, you're going to need the appropriate personnel forms. You're going to need employment applications, W-4s, determine if you're going to have employees versus independent contractors, etc. You're going to need a letterhead and business cards. Sounds pretty simple and something that you wouldn't have to be told, but it's critical. Can't practice without it. A couple of turnkey tools that you could look into that really will help you sort through all of this maze is I'm working on Yamaha cases, is Yahoo Small Business Maker, which incorporates PayPal, Symantec, and Legal Inc. A couple of great books that I would recommend are the Lean Law Firm book, which is available at the leanlawfirmbook.com. And the Florida Bar website has a tremendous amount of content for people looking to open their own practice, and it's called legalfuel.com. And I highly recommend that you could spend an entire day just watching videos and reading articles from that website alone. And I think regardless of what state you're in, it would apply to you. The Pomodoro 25-minute rule. What does this mean? It means that any task you seek to do, any job you seek to undertake, can be done if you have 25 minutes of complete privacy and uninterrupted time. No texts, no phone calls, no nothing. No people waving to you through the window saying hello. Anything we've gone over in this outline, if you follow the Pomodoro rule, you can knock out in 25 minutes or less, which means that you could do everything on this list within just a few weeks. The next thing I want to bring to your attention is I read a great book. It says on the outline, Ray Dalio. The gentleman's name is actually Ray Dalio. And the book is called Principles of Work and Life. And I find if you apply these 5 steps, you could get through the most insurmountable, what appear to be the most insurmountable problems. So the first one, and this applies to opening a new law office or learning to play golf or anything else you set out to do in your life. The first thing is you have to have clear goals. What is it I want to accomplish? Do I want to have a law firm that I'm a solo practitioner, or do I want to grow a law firm into 100 lawyers? The next thing is identify problems. Well, the problem could be there's a lot of competition out there. How do I break in? Well, step 3 is you have to accurately diagnose the problem. How much competition is there really? How many of them are in the same space you're practicing in? And is there room for one more? The 4th step is design plans to get around it. How am I going to make myself stand out if there is all of this competition? What am I going to do that's going to be different than the other guys? And then number 5 is execution. Push through to results. Once you've set your goals, identified problems, diagnosed the problems, designed a plan to get around it, none of that matters without taking the final step of execution. If you apply these 5 rules, you could get through anything. What I'd like to do now is, I see that we have a question, so let me check the question. Okay, this is the same question that dealt with the issue of malpractice insurance. If there's anybody else who has any questions right now, I'd like to open the forum and try to help answer whatever I can. Okay, seeing there's no questions, I'd like to at this time thank all of you for your time and how valuable your time is. I hope you got some value from this webinar, at least 1 or 2 things you could take away. I did just get a question, can I recommend a marketing company? A fantastic marketing company who I've worked with in the past is called Market My Market. And they really know the legal landscape inside and out. They take on very limited clientele, probably only one per city, and they make sure that their customers never overlap, and they're very reputable, and I would definitely recommend them. What do I think about billboard advertisements? Billboards are great. I have no problem with it. It really, again, depends upon the area of practice and the message you're trying to deliver. The thing about a billboard is people are seeing it for 2 seconds flat. A lot of times people have way too much content on a billboard, and it really serves no purpose at all. They obviously work because they're all over the country and you never see an empty billboard, okay? Which modalities you choose to use in terms of advertising, again, I think it depends upon your budget and it depends upon your area of practice, but billboards can be very effective. Next question, who should be my first hire, or who should my first hire be? That is an amazing question and a really tough one to answer. It's going to be one of 3 people. It's going to be a receptionist. It's going to be a receptionist / secretary / paralegal, because when you're starting out, you need people to wear many hats. Or if you're an old guy like me, you're probably going to want to have an associate from day one, because there's a lot of work that you'll want to delegate so that maybe you could focus on bigger picture stuff. So I don't know if that really answers your question, but as I said, there's a few different approaches. Another question, how do I feel about hiring people right out of law school? I think it's terrific. If you find someone who's really motivated, who has ties to the community, so that there's the potential of them bringing in work, but it's really all about the person. Some people need a lot of hand-holding, and some people are ready to dive in head first. But depending upon your budget, depending upon your area of practice, depending upon your needs, I think hiring someone right out of law school could be very cost effective, and you could get yourself someone who is extremely dedicated and loyal to you. Let's see if we have any other questions. Oh, thank you so much. Somebody typed, thank you for the information. It's invaluable, motivating me to start my own law firm. You're very welcome. I'm glad that I got some positive feedback. All right, as I said before, any questions anyone has that you either didn't feel like typing it now or you're too busy to deal with it, feel free to email me at info@lawyersofdistinction.com, and we'll be happy to help you to sort through this maze and finally achieve independence, which is the American dream. Thank you all very much for your time, and have a great day.